everybody. This is Lama Dawa Zangpo, and welcome back. We are discussing introductory Buddhist philosophy and meditation teachings. We're kind of doing a wide range of topics over the last couple months, and hopefully this is of relevance to beginner and other practitioners as well. So I'd like to always say, as usual, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask or write them in. This is for your benefit, and this is all about trying to address the individual needs of whoever is with us. So whoever and wherever you are, welcome, and we'll just get started. We've talked in the past about foundational teachings, kind of from a range of perspectives and topics. And then the last few weeks, we've actually kind of dialed into meditation practice itself. I want to step back from that tonight and kind of bring things a little bit down to earth, because really that is sort of the heart essence of Buddhism. It's very easy to get enamored by the sort of philosophical framework that presented and then was expounded upon by later generations of great Buddhist thinkers and masters. But the heart of Dharma, I want to say, is compassion. And we talk a lot about suffering in Buddhism. We talk a lot about emptiness and things like that. But it's really important that we don't forget the point of practice. And really, when we distill things down, we recite a prayer daily. Many Buddhists do, and it's called the Refuge Prayer. And it is a declaration of what we are aspiring to, what we're relying on, where we find and take our inspiration and direction, actually. And the notion of refuge is something we call, one translation I've seen is safe harbor. So where is safe harbor? Where is truly shelter from the storm? And we make this declaration at the outset of most or many Buddhist practices or even formal meditation sessions. My teacher, Kalu Rinpoche, once said, it's good to recite the refuge prayer or declaration 7 times a day. There's no number, there's no counting, there's no anything. He was simply saying that if we do this from our heart, multiple times a day that we sort of plug in, we kind of get to reset and reaffirm and just remind ourselves of kind of what we're doing and what our real aspiration is. So I think that's a very important point. When we say this declaration, though, there is kind of a punchline at the end of these little stanzas. And the final punchline is, may I fully wake up. May I fully become the same as the Buddha, just a fully awakened being. May I realize my mind's nature. But there's another element to that that's extremely important. It's sort of the crux of the matter. We are saying and declaring that our intention is to fully wake up, to drop our hindrances, our habits, the things that keep us stuck. But there's an extremely important thing that's tacked onto that, which is the reason we're doing this is for all beings. It's an extraordinarily magnanimous and actually kind of an audacious thing to say, that I am actually aspiring to liberate the whole, not just oneself. This is predicated on a foundational understanding that to take something from the Native Americans, all my relations, that we are completely related to every and each and all other beings in some sort of cosmic sense. There's some very deep connection, a relationship. And there's different metaphors that are used in traditional teachings to talk about that. But the point is, we have some intuitive awareness in our heart of hearts that, yes, it's really actually true. So an example I've sometimes given is, I remember driving in Oregon one night. And if those of you have spent time in Oregon, many dark, rainy nights, especially in the winter. And I was driving somewhere home, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, an opossum, and they're very common in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, but an opossum came out in front of my car just at the exact moment. And there was nothing to do, no way to swerve, no way to avoid it. I ran over it, and feeling and hearing that thump and knowing that that being's life just vanished. There was no conscious thought on my part, but there was this heart-wrenching kind of like just, people don't rejoice when something bad happens to another being, generally speaking. We have we are wired, we are connected, we are wired to all beings. So a random opossum, a marsupial living in North America that just scrounges on slugs, that's what they eat. And, they're pretty, anyway, it doesn't matter. We don't have to consciously have some kind of connection, something knowingly, but the fact is we are living beings sharing this world, but we're sharing this universe. And to me, that's sort of an example. So we're wired for compassion. Now, in Dharma, in Buddhism, we actually work with that. We try to amplify it. We could say cultivate it. We try to bring it to full expression. We try to bring it to our awareness because it's dormant in most of us. So, it's that thing of you're in the checkout line at the grocery store, and many people, maybe most people, don't really even see the, let's say, the cashier. What kind of day are they having? What's their life like? And what are their maybe problems or even crises or whatever's going on in their life? We just simply don't know. And generally, we just are getting on with our business. We just want to get out of the store, get our groceries and go. So that, the point of meditation, as we said before, is to slow down. And as I've said, when the mind starts to slow down, the swirl of thoughts kind of starts to settle, and we can kind of slow ourselves down, calm down a bit. Things, as I say, come into focus. We start to see more clearly. And this is a fundamental thing. We start to see the beings around us. It's the antithesis of being self-centered and just thinking about oneself, which is sort of, you could almost say, a default setting for many people. Is we default to, hey, I have to take care of myself, number one. But as we've said before, the path of Dharma, the path of Buddhist practice, is to, in a way, turn around or almost reverse our normal tendencies. That's what we can loosely call a spiritual path. So I've described this before. We say that most beings, let's say in our society, are going down the river of relationships, the river of careers, the river of family, the river of acquiring things, getting that new car, the river of status, And to really not just pay lip service, not just make it a hobby, but to really be practical authentically, is to make that effort to go up the river, not go with the current, not go the easy way, just be swept down, but to start to turn things around from being, let's say, so self-centered to being more empathetic, more compassionate, more magnanimous in our thinking. We can default to being impatient. Dharma practice is cultivate patience. We can say, I need everything for myself, because if I don't watch out for myself, I might lose what I have. The Dharma way is to be more giving and generous and extending ourselves. So there are many ways to practice compassion and cultivate compassion, but the point is to not forget and to keep that intention at the forefront. So this is what's called the Mahayana path. Mahayana means, Maha means the sort of great or broader or wider, more encompassing. It's a form of Buddhism that is taking into account that we're not in this by ourselves. And in this shared, not just shared humanity, but this shared sentience, that we share with all sentient beings, we start to understand, even just intellectually at first, but then through meditation practice and so on, we start to really get an understanding, an inkling at least, that yes, I have problems, I have challenges, I have difficulties. I, as we use the word, suffer. I have anxiety, I have stress, I have deep-seated worries. What will happen to me? What if I develop a disease, or my loved one does? But we start to realize everyone has these same feelings. And as is often said, everyone desires the exact same thing. Everyone, from that opossum to ourselves, is we all want happiness. We want peace. We want contentment. We want to be satisfied. We want to be okay. And everyone wants that. So we're not, from some standpoint, we're not special. We're not, or we can say we're not unique. Maybe it's that all beings are equally special, because all beings want the same thing. This is really leveling the playing field. This is about equanimity in a sense. We are not alone. This isn't just about me. It's about us, all sentient beings, us. And when we realize that all sentient beings have the same problems for the same reasons that we do, which is we're confused. All beings are confused. All beings, from the Albert Einsteins, all beings are confused. Now, it's different from having a high intellect or IQ or something like that, but all beings are fundamentally the same in being confused. We are confused because we don't see reality perfectly. We're confused because we are using a frame of reference that is very, very limited, which is our own sort of narrow perspective or viewpoint. We're confused because we believe that we really exist. And we can say, of course we exist. Here I am. I can feel myself. I exist. Of course, that's true on a relative level. But this separateness that we experience is part of our confusion. In fact, you could say it's the root of our confusion. I exist and I'm separate from everything else in the world. That's the basis of suffering. That's the basis of stress, of anxiety, of concern, of worry, of frustration. It all comes because we have this self that we strongly want to protect, we strongly cherish. It's called ego clinging, is the kind of literal translation from the Tibetan word dakzin, Zinpa means to hold or grasp something, and dak means oneself. And this, it's intuitive. It's below the level of conscious mind. It's just what we do. Now, again, the idea of reversing the flow of the river is to, instead of holding on tightly to this notion of a self, it's to start to learn how to relax and let go of that. It's called trust in a big way. We trust that we can let go. We can take, we've used the metaphor before. We learn how to ride a bike. We kind of grip the steering, the handlebars very tightly because, we have this sort of fear that if we don't, we're going to lose control. And when you get accomplished and you can ride a bike very easily, you can take your hands off the handlebars and just pedal, and you'll be fine. So that takes a little bit of trust. It takes and then it develops, your self-confidence and so on. But it's the same kind of notion. So Western Buddhist practitioners, and maybe practitioners of Buddhism from all over the globe, we work on understanding these doctrines of emptiness, of interdependence, impermanence, and we get good. We're pretty good at getting a conceptual understanding of these things, and that's fine, and that's very, very important, because wisdom is what we are developing. But the wisdom of the heart, that's the gold nugget. The wisdom of the heart is what we really practice as Buddhists. A great Buddhist practitioner, master, enlightened being, it's not like they're just some super intelligent, knowledgeable being. They typically are that, but they have a gentility, a softness, a humility, a caring about others that's genuine. Genuine. In fact, it's like having a broken heart. It can be overwhelming. It's actually probably the only appropriate response to being fully awake and really living in this world is to live with a fully broken heart. Because if we look at all the sentient beings that we share this universe with, we can't find one that has permanent happiness if they're confused. As long as a being is confused, they're going to be misguided. They're going to be barking up the wrong tree. They're going to be trying to hold on to things that are inevitable that they're going to have to let go of or lose or get disappointed by. Obviously, physical pain, disease, getting old, losing what we love, saying goodbye to our dearest loved ones, eventually leaving this world alone, saying goodbye to our bodies, everything that we've accumulated and worked for in this life, we have to, at some point, just let it all go and say goodbye and go somewhere we don't even know what's going to happen when we breathe our last breath. So there's, more often than not, tremendous fear. If you have fear of heights, if you have fear of anything, it's because there's this existential fear of losing ourself. It's that dak-sin, that holding on to oneself. So when we see that beings are confused, fundamentally confused about how things are, about this self, it's heartbreaking to see that all beings have this. Really what it comes from, and this is a wonderful insight in some great prayers and teachings. I think you could think of, there's a wonderful prayer by the third Karmapa, a great Lama from many centuries ago. And he said, in the moment of awakening, one sees that beings are stuck. It breaks breaks one's heart to see that. So what's the point of that? The point is, from an enlightened standpoint, the suffering of beings is why it's so heart-wrenching is because it's actually fundamentally unnecessary. Ignorance is curable. So that's the beauty, the promise, the richness of Dharma, of Buddhism, of the teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha, is that we all have to be fully awake, fully realized, and the fact that we don't, that's the fundamental cosmic, I don't want to say joke, it's the cosmic tragedy, actually, because it's unnecessary suffering. This is why we do that refuge prayer. May I wake up myself, because if I'm not awake, if I haven't let go of the ego and the self, if I'm still grasping, I'm not going to be able to fully really help others in an effective way. That's the motivation. As I said in the beginning, that's the Mahayana path. So it's something to really not just think about and then move on, but we start to join that with our practice, integrate it with our watching the breath, with our cultivation of mindfulness, with our contemplations and understanding of these truths that we hear about interdependence, about impermanence, about the ultimate emptiness or unfindability of anything in any permanent sense. So we're all sharing this. And just because we're Buddhist or whatever we are on some, let's say, Dharma or spiritual path, doesn't mean we're exempt, doesn't mean we're holier than thou, doesn't mean we are free. Humility means we are being honest with ourselves. We are honestly assessing our situation. The only difference is we may start to realize that we are confused, whereas most sentient beings don't even realize they're confused. In fact, they may have a lot of pride and think they're doing just great and that they have it together and so on. The point of impermanence that's so important is that if you're doing good and you're on top of the world and you've got everything you think you could want in this life, that's great. But it's
where ignorance is bliss comes from, in that sense that it's you could be very blissful in not knowing that you're confused.
Ignorance is bliss. It's true, but
it could also be death, right? I mean, if you're ignorant to having cancer, it could also be your death. Sorry, just sorry, didn't mean to interject there.
That's fine. No, it's true. It's true. So the path of waking up is starting by realizing that we have ignorance, that we're not sort of perfected, and that we've got a ways to go. It's sort of to sober us up. It's kind of just, that sort of honesty, brutal honesty, harsh honesty, whatever we want to call it, but it's just being honest. It's just saying, okay, I'm starting to learn to see clearly that I don't have all the answers. I don't have the solutions. And it's not because I'm being victimized by an uncaring God or an uncaring, unfeeling universe. It's not like that at all. It's just our own patterns and habits where we've remained stuck. And again, all sentient beings are similarly stuck in the patterns that they have inherited and perpetuated. So we talk about past karma. That's what we've inherited. We talk about present karma. That's what we're perpetuating. And then we can talk about sort of future karma. That's the fruition of things coming to ripening of these either past seeds or these present actions that are that continue this journey of, we could say, a journey of stuckness. So Buddhism, what I love about it is it's unbelievably refreshingly honest. It's not sugarcoating. It's not pretending all is great, all is bliss. On a relative level, there's wonderful happiness in this world and joys. But if you hold on to them and you expect or want them to last, it's not going to happen, right? And we know this, of course. But this all comes back to this perspective of a big, open, and maybe somewhat broken heart, where we can fully live in this world from a place that's kind, caring, really appreciative, really grateful.
I like that the fundamental idea of what you were saying in the beginning is compassion. I think if we can just keep in mind, or if I can keep in mind, it'd be nice if everyone could, but if I could keep that in mind, being compassionate, just holding that and remembering to do that, because it's difficult especially when you're confronted with somebody who's maybe yelling at you or doing something negative. To be compassionate even in the face of that would be real something that I would strive to do, and I could probably use some of that this week.
Well, this is why we've talked in the past videos about the paramitas, generosity, patience, and so on. These are what we cultivate, and we do other practices, which we can talk about in subsequent videos. Exchanging oneself for others, it's called Tonglen Practice. And we can, even in certain Tibetan practices, we say mantras that remind us of compassion, like Om Mani Padme Hung, that many of the viewers are probably heard or familiar with. And these are things we can talk about in the future. But that's the point, is, as I said earlier, is there are specific practices, techniques, tools, whatever we want to call them, to cultivate our compassion. Because as you just said, Tal, most of us, all of us, don't have fully developed compassion. And we need to remember it. And that's called practice. So there's wonderful techniques and everything available to us. Practice means we practice. We put these things into, we train ourselves.
Or